My parents sat us down one day and said, we would like to actually build this as a proper vineyard, a real vineyard estate, and do this with a full level of commitment, but we won't do it unless the two of you commit the rest of your lives to it.
Well, this is a total thrill for me to be here. I really mean that. This is such a beautiful estate. And meeting with Florencia Palmaz, and she's the CEO. Thank you very much for having us up here today. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to have you here, and on such an august day of Napa, right?
It was Premier Napa Valley.
It was Premier, so yeah, we're gonna give ourselves a whole lot of rope because it was a very long morning of drinking a lot of lots.
Exactly. We're both, even though we're sitting, we're both standing, so that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a very busy day, and what was really cool is I got a chance to meet you when we were at the auction in between 10 million other people. And
absolutely.
I was glad I spotted you, or you spotted me. I don't remember how that worked.
Hey, it was kismet like it always is in those
It's
things.
exactly what it was. It was meant to be.
Yeah, there you go.
We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk about Coombsville. But
cool.
before we get to Coombsville, I want to talk a little about you and your family history.
Okay.
And obviously the history of this incredible estate. How many acres are you farming here?
We're farming about 68. We have just over 650 acres, so most of this is really virgin mountain. And then we have 3 small vineyards sort of tucked in different elevations. So primary vineyard was 300-foot elevation, then there's 1,200-foot elevation, and 1,400. So we're sort of tucked in this mountain here at Mount George, which is, like you said, in the heart of Coombsville.
It's really something to see.
Oh.
This is a must-visit type place. I mean, it's really lovely. Let's talk about the history and how this came about. How did Palmaz come
Oh
to
gosh,
her?
we're nothing more than the latest generation watching over this place. This place has incredible history that dates way before us. This vineyard was in the 1840s known as Bill Woodward's Whiskey Ranch.
Oh, of course it was.
Yeah. And there's actually the footing of Bill Woodward's still house, still in the center of our 1,200-foot elevation vineyard. It was placed there because back then there was an extraordinary, and still is an extraordinary spring that was the spring water for his distillery. And this very intrepid road that would drive from basically from our entrance today all the way up to the middle of the mountain where people would buy whiskey. That caught the attention of an entrepreneurial European, sort of aspiring vintner who was from San Francisco, Henry Hagen, who decided to come out here and bought Bill Woodward's place to start a vineyard. I think it was the water and honestly the mountain that attracted him, and he was, I would say, a visionary of his time. This is already 1876. He started, and even then he knew that hillside plantings and tucking yourself up into the little nooks and crannies of mountainsides make for finer wines. He was, in fact, the parcel was a little bit larger than what we have today. The neighboring property that was sold before we came. Mm-hmm. The flatland was where he had corn and hay. That was his cash crop. That would help him pay for his barrels to make the wine that was up here, where our vineyards are today. So he was making wine and successfully selling barrels of his wine to his brother-in-law, who was selling them actually down South of Market in San Francisco.
Wow. And
was known as Cedar Knoll Vineyards. They ran a very successful operation until, unfortunately, phylloxera. This was one of the first sites of phylloxera.
Was it really?
Yes.
Wow.
It's a terrible infamy to have.
Yeah, it is. It's scary.
And unfortunately was sort of the precipice of really put him out just years before. I would say that was sort of the first nail in the coffin. The second one that really sealed his fate was, of course, Prohibition. The winery from there went, unfortunately, he lost the property. It was sort of shuttered from agriculture up until about World War II. The next owner was then running it as a dried fruit, which is really very common if you think about it, as people were trying to revive their properties, even just doing dried apples for the war effort. was common. So this property actually became a prune and apple orchard.
Yeah, a lot of apple dryers used to exist around.
Yeah, and we still have a drying house
okay,
here.
Cool.
And we came along and purchased it from sort of the third generation of that family, who was operating the property in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So by the time we came, it was 86 years fallow. And honestly, there were probably more mattresses and washing machines and cars in the vineyard than there were vines.
Wow.
So we had our work cut out for us. We had to put the house back into repair, bring the vineyard back. We were incredibly lucky. So in 1996, my parents decided that they wanted to live the dream and find a vineyard. My brother and I are incredibly lucky to have been raised by parents who from the beginning said, really what we're here to do is build a legacy and find something that we can all do as a family for multiple generations. So that's our goal. So we found this property, and it needed a whole lot of work, and it was perfect. This is going to take a couple generations to fix.
Yeah.
So we're still here. We're still at it. The house we've brought back, and when we purchased the place, the original furniture of Henry Hagen, this is why I get a little emotional when I just say this, was still in the basement.
Oh, my.
So inside the drawers of his desks and his, all the pieces of furniture were vineyard maps, were irrigation plans, barrel tags, everything we needed to piece back the history. Because by then, 86 years, you can imagine, the history of Henry Hagen, all of that had been long forgotten. And we were so lucky that that existed, because it's what really gave us the inspiration to say, let's not just make this a nice family home and maybe a hobby vineyard. Let's really do this. This is a special piece of history of Napa Valley that we need to bring back. I was in my 20s. My brother was just coming out of high school, and my parents sat us down one day and said, we would like to actually build this as a proper vineyard, a real vineyard estate, and do this with a full level of commitment, but we won't do it unless the two of you commit the rest of your lives to it.
It's a little daunting, maybe.
It was a little daunting, I'm not going to lie. At 22, I thought it was awesome. I was like, seriously? I get to come and live in Napa Valley and make one of the most extraordinary products in the world? I'm in. I didn't even have to think about that.
But your brother at 13 might
My brother at 13 was like,
run away.
Actually, you know what was really cute? He goes, well, can I have a horse? Because he thought of this as a ranch, right?
Sure.
And my parents sort of were like, well, I mean, if you really want a horse when you come to work at the vineyard, when you finish your education, I suppose you can think about getting a horse. And thankfully, by the time he turned 16, horse turned into horsepower, and he never got a horse. We don't have any horses on property. There was never a lapse in commitment. For us, we've been living a dream ever since. We're from Argentina originally. Came to the U.S. In the early 80s. My father was a medical student, came here to UC Davis first. So he did his residency in vascular radiology in the 80s here at UC Davis. So it was interesting. I think, for that, it was a natural thing to do if you are, a part of the professors, one of the, professors and staff of the University of California, Davis, to be curious about what the enology department does.
Yeah.
And so it was, it was sort of this immediate sort of jealousy and intrigue as to what they do over there in the winemaking department. And my father was really always fascinated by that. It was fascinated by what they were studying in that department, and then additionally coming over on the weekends and hearing about, what are the wineries that are doing interesting work back then. And we're talking, I think of it as the heyday of really the greats of Napa Valley Cabernet.
Yeah.
They were really digging in the 80s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
All of my rock stars, right? All the pillars of everything I know and do were those vintners that came in the 80s. So I grew up as a kid, literally a toddler, kicking the rocks in the parking lot of all these extraordinary wineries, because my parents would come out on the weekends and they would, come and taste a glass of wine on the barrel top and on the crush pad of all these great wineries. So that was our love when we lived here in California in the 80s. And then my father's academic research got an opportunity at the University of Texas, and we had to move away.
Oh.
Moving away from California for my mother was very hard. She had already left her entire life in Argentina to follow her husband in the pursuit of medicine and was brought to a beautiful place. Then she had to leave this beautiful place to go to Texas in the middle of August, at a time in which, they just packed up and left. She made him make a promise that if someday, if things went well in our lives, that they would come back to California. So that always lived out there lingering in my family's lore. And his research yielded something that was extraordinary and incredibly unexpected. I mean, literally, my father was a professor of the VA hospital, a university professor, and developed the first cardiovascular, the stent. So cardiovascular, the entire concept. And it was an amazing moment in the history of medicine.
Sure, it changed the world.
It changed the world. It's recognized as one of the top 10 patents that changed the world, sort of the survivability of heart disease, and it's it's been amazing. I mean, I can gush about Dad and what he's done for hours.
You're allowed to gush.
Thank you. So that was an amazing and wild ride. To see that and to be, to live that. Dad went from being a total academic to being thrust into really some of the most vicious and wild, fast-growing medical devices in history. And he's always, at the end of the day, he's an academic at heart. He's a researcher, he's an academic, he loves to dig into a subject and really get deep into it. And wine was his refuge for years, sort of dating back to those days in the 80s when we were visiting wineries. So it was just a natural that we were going to come back as they started planning what to do next. And for them, it was a very conscious decision to come back to Napa Valley, to build something that as a family we can all build together. I think they were very afraid of their kids becoming idle and frivolous.
True.
And coming here, even though wine is frivolous, right? I still think it's essential to civilization.
I would agree with you, yes.
It's a real joy and it's a pleasure. It's a fun, it's one of the funner essentials in life to make.
Yeah, sure.
But we have real work here. We have real farming and we have real responsibilities, and it's been fascinating. So they fell in love with this notion of let's build an estate, let's build something that for multiple generations, let's all come and live here. So actually, each one of us have a home. My parents are living in the historic home. My brother and sister-in-law are in the gatehouse. I'm down here what they call the farmhouse, and so we're all raising our kids kind of on this compound and growing grapes and making estate wine, sort of old school.
One of the main questions I wanted to get to today in this interview and talking about is what makes Coombsville special?
Ooh, gosh. I think Coombsville, well, first of all, what I think Coombsville has two things that makes it really special. One is it doesn't have a bloated sense of identity. Coombsville is still, as a community, really committed to just making good wine. They're not sitting on the backs of a lot of overpriced, blown out reputation that they're having to live up to. So you really are sitting in, and it's not an overpriced community. Like, there are still young, intrepid, passionate people coming in and making wine authentically and without having to come in with a lot of PE money. There really are just still buying homes and building, small estates and growing wine down here. So if you're interested in knowing sort of the authentic side of Napa, Coombsville's a gem still.
I would agree, yes.
So there's that, right? I love that. I love being part of a community of people who really are just living here and making wine. The other piece of Coombsville that it gets a lot of misinterpretations. People tend to love to simplify it and say Coombsville's cooler and we make more finessed Cabernets. It is not necessarily cooler all the time. In fact, what it is more moderated. So when we're in the springtime like now, we are a little bit warmer. So we're a little more sheltered in that regard. But when we're in the summer, we're a little bit cooler. So we have these longer, softer, sort of shouldered And what I mean by shoulder, I'm just thinking of like when you look at the graph and you think of the highs and lows of a daily. Here in Coombsville, they're softer slopes. So we come up to temperature a little bit more gradually. We come down in temperature a little bit more gradually. And that's really the marine effect. It's like we're just far enough away that we can really mature Cabernet nicely, but we're not so far away that we're then dealing with, crazy highs in the summer. We're not peaking past 100. You can see some of those stresses that you're experiencing now in the last, I would say in the last 20 years, up valley, when they get hot, right? And so when they get overripe, they get overblown out. Down here, we don't experience quite so much afternoon variation in the summer. And conversely, when it's time for a freeze to hit you, that marine effect in the spring
kind
protects
of
us.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't get quite so much frost damage either. So that's what I'm saying. So it's, to say that we're cooler is actually a misnomer because we're warmer in the spring.
What would you say makes it special?
Yes, actually, exactly what you're touching on is what I think makes our wine, this estate, very special, is this extraordinary diversity of terrain, right? So I get to play with pockets that are completely different from each other. And then, all in one estate, I then say, let's go make a really finessed wine. So not only am I sitting in a pocket of Napa that protects me from making blown out and overly angular or overly extracted wine. So I get to already be somewhat finessed and constrained because I'm in Coombsville. I then get to work with this amazing diversity of soil and fruit quality that's then going to be able to be blended into something that's really complex and finessed. So as a blending house, as a Cabernet blending house, this is sort of like the best of the both worlds. The challenge is you then have to create an operation that can still be small and artisan and authentic and deal with a ton of variability. That operationally can be very stressful if you're not organized. And we built this winery to try and stay organized fundamentally. How do we make lots of little lots? Because we have lots of little nooks and crannies in this vineyard that we want to harvest. We want to farm them differently. We want to harvest them differently. We want to ferment them differently. How are we going to capture that without completely driving ourselves crazy?
For our listeners who would like to taste here, I'm assuming this is, of course, by appointment. Is that fair?
Yes, absolutely. By appointment, of course, our permit being tucked here back way off the highway, it's an appointment only, and they're all private. So one of the things that we always wanted to do was continue the tradition that we had started when we first opened, was to have, a one-on-one bespoke experience for all of our guests. So, it'll be a private tour where you can really just be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't feel intimidated. Ask the questions you want. If you want this to be a very technical tour, obviously you can hear I'm the sister. My brother's very much the tech and the industry. If you were to have an interview with him, it'd be completely different. And I think it's what makes us actually an amazing team.
Yeah, right. It's very true.
So here we have actually some really amazing tech, and we have, our approach to how we make the wine, right? Our gravity flow, a lot of our AI tools, I guess you could say, are really extraordinary, and they're fun, and there's not a part of this winery that an ambassador is forbidden from showing.
Nice.
So if you want to go all the way down and visit the bottling line, go for it. Ask the ambassador to tell you about the areas that other people are afraid to ask.
That's a big deal.
I think it is.
Yeah, totally.
And every one of my ambassadors are highly educated. They've been working for us exclusively for long periods of time. They're very much part of our family. I think everyone who works here will speak in the we. And I've heard that several times. Say, "Wow, that's really crazy." But everyone says "we" all the time. Like, is it? And there's like, yes, because they're family members. They're part of our family, and we want them to be as fully empowered. So if you actually want to be curious about the vineyard, absolutely walk right out the door. Come right down. Right in front of us is one of my favorite parcels. Come walk this row and check out the cover crop.
And for our listeners who'd like to learn about you online, what is your website?
Yes, so our website is palmazvineyards.com. And there's a ton of data there. There's vineyard maps, there's blend maps, there's tasting notes on our entire library. There's, of course, the ability to purchase wine, and then, of course, the experiences are on there. It's a deep and big website, lots of roaming around you can do in there.
That's great. Well, I would like to go back again and chat with you a little bit more because I'd like to learn more about what's going on behind the curtain. But for the time being, it was a real pleasure meeting you, and thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. I love the opportunity to be able to share what we're doing out here.